Well,
Energy Indaba, they call it, huh?
Yes, it's Africa Energy Indaba. As you know, that we have a World Energy Conference that takes place every 3 years. This Africa Energy Indaba is the African leg of that particular conference, focusing mainly on the energy issues that affects the African continent, and this was hosted at Sandton Convention Centre. We, as the Gauteng Growth and Development Agency in Gauteng, partnered with the organizers of this conference, which is SANIA, the Southern African National Energy Association, as well as the World Energy Council. Our objectives in particular was that of driving the whole theme of energizing Africa's growth through energy. And we find that quite relevant to the Gauteng economy, because we are the contributors of over 40% of manufacturing is basically coming out of Gauteng, and energy is the driving force for that particular energy. But also key to that were the opening remarks that were done by the National Minister of Energy in terms of the South African strategic position, in terms of the role we play to unlock energy requirements for South Africa and for Africa in particular. And that relates to the project that like Inga, where South Africa is really the driving force of the development of Inga, which is a hydropower electricity supply for mainly consumption for DRC as well as for South Africa.
Now, tell us more about the outcomes of Indaba. What were some of the findings and recommendations? Was it all about just energy, and energy relates to power supply, or was there more?
Well, basically, this conference, the way it started is that there was a questionnaire sent to about the key CEOs of energy sectors. And the questionnaire was about what is it that keeps them awake.
Probably a rolling blackout.
In South Africa. What keeps them awake in particular in African countries. Now, the main issues that came out was mainly to expand on what is referred to as the trilemma in terms of the energy supply, which is mainly issues of energy access, as well as energy security and sustainability. And along that was mainly looking at the outcomes of what is the role of the market, as well as the role of government. And the major outcomes that came out of this conference was that to roll out energy in terms of its infrastructure and requirements, government is a key player, basically because of the risks that are involved in the infrastructure for energy. And those risks are primarily based on security of supply, as well as some of the energy that are related to security in the sense of the nature of the natural resources that we use, such as nuclear energy, that you cannot just allow the market forces to be the one that will venture into nuclear energy, given the other use of nuclear energy in that. But the other important thing is that these natural resources are the natural resources of the country, such as coal, so that you cannot leave it only entirely to the private sector to mine the coal, and therefore it is the role of the government to ensure that there is sustainability for future generations. And the other outcome, of course, was basically around business matchmaking. And in the business matchmaking, we were really focusing on looking at South African companies that can look at opportunities that are there in terms of the developments in the energy. As you know, there is a very topical issue of the shale gas that is currently taking place in the Karoo. But the main companies that will be bringing the technology for shale gas, the current debate is that in South Africa, we don't have companies that have been involved in drilling oil, for example. And the technology that you use there will mainly benefit companies in America, and you see the Chinese are also entering into that market. So our role from a GGDA perspective is how do we then ensure that the local content, in terms of localization of local engineering companies, come into the supply, and therefore increase the participation of our businesses in supplying the components that will go with this major electricity generation.
Just briefly, we heard that you also had that India was playing a key role in growing Gauteng's economy. What is the story there?
Well, as you know, in terms of India, our relationship is that from the BRICS perspective, the role of India in terms of coming into growing South African economy is on a number of aspects. Firstly, the population size of India creates a bigger market for South African companies for our export development, but also we have strong companies on pharmaceuticals from the India perspective, and we also have a lot of them from technology. And therefore, in terms of ICT and technology, which are the other services that come with the production of energy, similar to the way in which we grow the Gauteng economy. As you know, Gauteng just remained an area of Johannesburg which was mining, and all the services that came in here were basically support services to the mining sector. And therefore, given the India advance in technology and ICT, we also will look at them also in partnering with our South African companies in the development and exploration of this project of bringing energy to Africa.
Mr. Ngwenya, we need a lot more time to discuss this. There's too little time, unfortunately.
Absolutely.
We've run out of time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
That was Sphiwe Ngwenya, the CEO of the Gauteng Growth and Development Agency. Now, we'll be